Getting late early out there for the Dallas Stars. On today's edition of Locked On Oilers, I'm going to explain why the Oilers are one win away from going back to the Stanley Cup Final for the second straight season.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone that is making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This is my third NHL season with Locked On. This is my second playoffs as host of Locked On Oilers. This is my 10th NHL season of doing digital media content, which is crazy to say out loud, but I couldn't be happier to be here, and I couldn't be happier that you're along for the ride. So on today's very busy Victory Wednesday edition of the show, we're going to walk through a few of the key storylines from this game. We're going to walk through the game at large, dissect the feeling, the energy, the vibes. We'll break out the Locked On Oilers dry erase board to go over the Draisaitl power play goal, the smart play Corey Perry makes that he didn't get away with the second time when he tried to set a pick. And then we'll close out today's show talking a little bit about how the Oilers go about closing this out as quickly as possible. So to start things out, and I think anybody who watched this game would agree with me when I say this, the Stars came out in that first period with some real juice. You could tell the Stars understood the gravity of the situation, that they had a real responsibility, a real obligation to push as hard as they could out of the gate to try and set the tone, to try and get themselves in control. Because even though that hasn't worked to their effect through these first few games of the series, it is their game. By and large, even with Mikko Rantanen in the fold now, the Stars are still a possession and cycle team. And it's really interesting to watch play out because you saw it in those first two rounds against Winnipeg and against Colorado. The Stars were largely absorbing pressure. They were waiting for counterattack opportunities, and they were hitting guys like Rantanen, hitting guys like Roope Hintz, and creating off of the rush. In this series, even though the Oilers have done a really nice job defensively, and we'll get there, the miraculous third period where they only conceded 3 shots on goal against, the Stars are controlling the puck. The Stars do have the puck more, but the beauty of it and why the Oilers are having such great success playing as much defense as they are is that it's pretty clean. And there's a few aspects to defense when we talk about it technique-wise and strategy-wise that we don't always do the best job of hitting on or explaining, but one of the real keys and one of the reasons the Oilers have been so good in transition in this series is the simple matter of the fact they feature mobile and puck-adept defensemen. When you go through this group 1 through 6, you can make an argument this is probably the best defensive unit remaining in the playoffs overall. Now, if we're going to go by my gym class theory, we're going to go by talent as a quantity and you add up all of the talent, I think you could make an argument Heiskanen and Harley and Lindell put the Stars probably slightly ahead. But when you go blow for blow, guy for guy, the Oilers have 6 guys you feel really good about. And don't look now, but Mattias Ekholm has a chance to play on Thursday in a potential closeout game. And you add one of the NHL's best defensive defensemen to a group that's already playing really high-end defense and doing it with guys who are all walking very interesting career paths. And that's really the first big point I wanted to talk about on today's show. I had done a hit over the weekend on MGM TV to talk a little bit about Oilers Stars Game 3 going into that game right before at 3 o'clock on Sunday. And they had asked me what was the biggest difference for the Oilers this year versus last year. And I hit on no McLeod, no Holloway, having a healthy Evander Kane, having a healthier Draisaitl. If you recall, Draisaitl really started to hit a physical wall the longer the playoffs went on. And then I really pivoted, and it really kind of hit me going into that third game just how good the Oilers defense is in comparison to what it was last year. And Some of it is simply a matter of some positive regression swinging the Oilers' way. And some of it is a byproduct of smart decision making. I think when you know you've had Brett Kulak in the fold for a few seasons now, and you know what his strengths are, and you see he has the capacity to play slightly more minutes, and as the regular season went along, the Oilers increasingly ticked up those minutes. And now he's played some time with Evan Bouchard on that first pair. We, of course, have to talk about the Jake Wallman, John Klingberg pair, which would not have been on the team 2 months ago and has played really well in this series. And then Darnell Nurse and Troy Stecher have put together really solid numbers as a pair in this postseason. Stecher able to move the puck a little bit better, Nurse able to go and retrieve it, absorb a little bit more pressure, win some foot races, use his sides to win puck battles. But the Oilers are winning this series largely off of smart strategic defense. And God willing, it's been Stuart Skinner, which a week and a half ago, I said was one of the reasons I could see the Oilers very much losing this series. When you factor in, and it's why goaltending is such voodoo and why there's no real way to know, and why I'm always going to err on the side of, do you really believe in your goalie, or are you just riding the hot hand? And of course, anybody who's well-versed in math will tell you the hot hand idea is a fallacy. It's not based on evidence. It is not something that is going to translate and necessarily be predictive going forward into future production. But right now, Stuart Skinner's outplaying Jake Ottinger. And I think it's hilarious. I say that in a game where the one goal Jake Ottinger gave up, he was horrendously out of position. The Robertson goal, and look, Jason Robertson's a very good shooter. I know he's having a rough playoffs, coming off of a serious injury, probably playing pretty dinged up, but Skinner was already dropped onto his in the butterfly when Robertson hadn't even released the puck yet, or at least was on his way down into butterfly when Robertson had released the puck, because Skinner had lost the puck in transition. And Skinner has continued to make the saves he's supposed to. And that's your goal here if you're the Oilers. Can you get Skinner to make the saves he's supposed to? And there's a higher volume of them, a higher frequency of them than there were in some of the earlier games in the Vegas series or in the LA series, where they really had needed Skinner to make some plays for them. But so far, he's done a reasonable job of keeping the temperature of these games down. There's no crazy swings. There's no crazy runs. The Oilers are keeping the temperature manageable. They are playing defense. They are absorbing pressure. They're playing too high zone defense, if you will, if you're well versed in where the NFL is at right now and how all these defenses are trying to mitigate this army of young gifted quarterbacks like Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud. I could go on and on. All of those teams trying to slow those guys down are playing no doubles. They're fine with letting you dink and dunk underneath, get the ball out quick to the sideline, try and get the ball to playmakers, let them make plays in space. Kind of what the Oilers are doing right now, where the Stars are holding the puck a lot. They're moving around the perimeter of the offensive zone, but they're having a really hard time getting that puck inside. They're having a really hard time cutting to the net and creating dangerous offense. And this has been the Stars' recurring issue for much of this Hintz, Heiskanen, Ottinger era. And I know they're very early on in their life cycle as a Stanley Cup contender because their key building blocks are on the younger side. But part of the reason they went out and they gave up Logan Stankoven and those assets to get Mikko Rantanen was for him to make a difference in a series like this, where the Stars have always had the depth and they've always had the quality goaltending and defensemen. But as I've said a lot on Locked On Oilers, and the everydayers have heard me say this quite a bit this regular season in particular, the most valuable thing you can have in the NHL is an elite forward, and then an elite defenseman, and then an elite goalie, because that's the order in which those can impact the game most to least. And I'm not knocking the elite goalies. I'm knocking the elite defensemen. It helps if you can have all three. Look at what the Lightning were able to do with a Kucherov, with a Hedman, and a Vasilevsky. If you can have all three, great. But if you can only pick one, you're better off having the elite forwards. And you are watching the Oilers play that out in real time with a group that has been really piecemeal as far as the goaltending between Pickard and Skinner, and the defense, where you had to trade for Jake Wallman ahead of the trade deadline. You saw John Klingberg out of free agency coming off of major double hip surgery. You pieced together Troy Stetcher, who you've brought in and out of the lineup over the course of the regular season. You don't know if or when Matthias Ekholm will be back in this series, but to have a piecemeal defense playing at this high of a level, they don't need a whole lot offensively to go their way, and it's why they've been able to get by with 2-3 goals in this series. We're going to take our first break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers, and when we come back, I'm going to get a little deeper into some of the individual performances that drove this game, coming up next on Locked On Oilers. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily nutritional value. Plus, they're packed with that ultra important fiber for gut health and better for you unsaturated fats to help you keep feeling fuller longer. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the no-shell variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for my busy days when I'm here at my desk doing research or editing or putting the show together. Or if it's the end of the day and I'm trying to squeeze in a couple more grams of protein to hit my macros for the day, they're a great go-to. Or if you're old school and you love cracking open every shell for that classic satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are an old school favorite. Wonderful Pistachios is a complete protein that provides all 9 essential amino acids. So get snacking and get cracking today with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. And with the Oilers on the precipice of a second straight Stanley Cup Finals appearance, I really wanted to highlight some of the growth and some of the real material differences between this year and last year. And first and foremost, the biggest one that jumps out at me is how much more they are getting out of their tertiary players, getting out of guys like Corey Perry. And we're going to start with Perry because I want to use the dry erase board and then put it away out of my field of view because I do get distracted very easily. So to set up that first goal, the Draisaitl goal from the really sharp angle, this is a play that happens in the neutral zone. So I'm going to grab the dry erase board here and I'm going to walk you through this play and why it is dangerous. So down here at the bottom is where the play happens. So you have Perry, you have Draisaitl. Draisaitl, that little blue dot, that's the puck. He's marked by Granlund. Heiskanen is here. Harley is here. They have one more penalty killer here. Bouchard is trailing behind the play. Nuge, McDavid. This play happens super duper quick. So all that happens and why it works. Draisaitl cuts a little bit wider. Perry comes to the middle here, blocks off these two. Draisaitl's able to get inside. He gets the puck to the middle, and then it comes back to him. It is a really simple play that, by definition, the Oilers should not have been able to get away with. You saw Perry get called for a pick play. You saw Mason Marchment get called for a pick play on the Stars' behalf later in the game. But that type of situational awareness, and it's one of the real small area parts of the game that someone like Perry, his IQ jumps out and his experience jumps out. And I'm going to make a similar point about Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's probably been the best player in this series for either team. 9 points in 4 games. Like, come on, man. That's crazy to me. But the thing that jumps out about Perry is the small area game. So if the puck's within his 5 to 10 foot radius, he's never been an elite skater. Even when he was winning Hart trophies, even when he was winning Rocket Richards as a Duck, winning Stanley Cups as a Duck, he was never a great skater. It was always his shot. It was always his positioning that was going to make him able to score all of these goals. And you saw it on the goal. He was able to facilitate himself scoring on the layoff from Nuge. When you have the great stick, and make no mistake about it, Perry in that close 5 to 10 foot range is still an elite stick player where he can stick lift. He's really good at using his body for leverage to create space for himself. And Frankly, it's one of the few areas where you see just how gifted of a hockey player he used to be. The flash isn't as bright, obviously, as when he was a Hart Trophy guy that got on the Team Canada, but you see it in those small little bursts where he wins a puck battle against a bigger and faster player because he just stick lifts them, or because he's able to get his stick in a lane, slow the puck down from breaking out on the forecheck, and he creates more time. As for Nugent-Hopkins, this is a former first overall pick, someone who's a long way into an NHL career in their early 30s, has really been through it all as an Oiler. And in this series, as part of a defense first line and on the power play as the third or fourth option, has continued to put up counting stats and continued to make a real impact. This is somebody who won 75% of his faceoffs tonight, somebody who was able to chip in another multi-point night, and the goal he sets up to Perry is just beautiful hockey because he waits and waits and waits until the Stars defender starts to move. When the Stars defender starts to move, Ottinger realizes, oh, I need to mark the shooter. I need to mark the pass because my defender is trying to take away the shooting lane. And when you have those split-second decisions, and look, I got to be fair, that play happens by and large because two Stars players are drifting towards McDavid and Draisaitl, who both happen to be in the offensive zone at the same time. But Perry and Nuge got to execute. And I talk about this a lot in regards to some teams around the NHL. I think the Rangers have been guilty of this at times. I think the Islanders have been guilty of this at times. It's not easy to play with superstars. It's not easy to line up next to a McDavid or a Draisaitl and be able to do the part. And I give a lot of credit to Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who had a really tough regular season, all things considered, as far as counting stat production, injuries, and really couldn't get his game going in a similar way as we've seen. And in the regular season, the Oilers' power play wasn't bad, but it wasn't elite. And tonight, you saw the byproduct and the virtue, if you will, of having a multitude of ways to win. And we talked about that extensively on yesterday's show. And I had a comment, someone left a comment on the YouTube video saying, don't get that confident now, plenty of series left. And I try not to make that confidence projection come off as arrogance, because there is a difference between confidence and arrogance, because confidence is rooted in evidence and proof and feeling it, whereas arrogance ventures into hubris and you start taking things less seriously. I think if anything, the Oilers have only continued to elevate their game as these playoffs have gone on. They have put together two clinical third periods in back-to-back games protecting leads and really clamped things down, not giving the Stars a whole lot of room. I think by and large, the only Stars line that really did a whole lot tonight was Duchesne, Sagan, and Marchment, and that was just creation. They didn't really get a whole lot on the net. They didn't really get a whole lot of heat. I think they did a good job in transition of breaking through the Oilers in the neutral zone and gaining the zone with speed and trying to make the Oilers uncomfortable. But ultimately, if you don't put the puck in the net, it doesn't matter a whole lot how dangerous the chances you are. And this is the peril of being a possession-based team, because in the long run, over an 82-game regular season, if you consistently control the puck more shots on goal, high danger chances, expected goals, you're going to win 45 to 52 regular season games pretty easily. That's pretty much the recipe if you were putting together a checklist like it was grocery shopping for being a consistently good regular season team. But in these short runs where we're only talking about a best of 7 series, good players can go cold for 2 weeks. You have guys like Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin who aren't really manifesting a whole lot. You have someone like Wyatt Johnston who's at less than half a point per game now after being one of the best players in the entire playoffs last year. And it's not that he's playing atrociously, but sometimes the bounces aren't there. And of course, as we've discussed a lot, you can make your own luck when you're a good enough team. Things like drawing penalties, things like creation in the offensive zone. You get a stupid goal every now and then, like Kasperi Kapanen getting an empty netter by being in the right place at the right time, by making a good play in the defensive zone to eventually spring himself going back the other way. You can create your own luck with enough good luck. But coming up next, we're going to take our second and final break of today's edition of Locked On Oilers. and we get to our final segment, I'm going to explain to you why this series has kind of defied expectations. Coming up next. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Victory Wednesday edition of Locked On Oilers. And I expected this series to have ebbs and flows. And the first two games in this series were very much ebbs and flows. You saw the Oilers get out to the lead and you saw them capitulate. You saw the Stars come storming back, score the 3 straight power play goals, win that game 6-3. Game number 2, a little more defensive. The Oilers absorbing pressure. Big second period from Stuart Skinner. Lots of opportunities to win. Game 3, similar vibe. The Oilers, lots of chances for the Stars, but bend don't break, counterattack the other way. You get a couple McDavid points, you get a couple Nuge points, and it doesn't matter if the other team is outscoring chancing you or out expecting goalsing you, because you're actually going and putting the puck in the net. And I talked about this pretty extensively on yesterday's episode, the idea of knowing how to read these underlying numbers. And I think part of what makes this game in particular, game 4, interesting is that for the first 2 periods, the Stars really burnt it. They really pushed aggressively as they could to try and win this game, to get out to a lead, to play strong situational hockey. And eventually you hit a physical wall. You cannot maintain that level of intensity for 60 straight minutes. It's just not physically possible. There is eventually a wall where the return on investment starts to decrease the harder you push. And the Stars tried to make things happen. They drew some power plays. They created some weird rushes and created some turnovers for themselves, but they weren't able to convert. And when you add that with the PDO luck some of their guys are having, like Jason Robertson, like Wyatt Johnston, who just can't seemingly get a bounce, in the long run, they'll be okay. I expect the Stars to be right back in a similar position next year. But as of right now, you are going into a potential closeout game on home ice where you can't score. The Stars scored more in game 1 than they have in every other game in the rest of the series combined. They have really struggled to put together a coherent offense. And it's not that the Oilers are putting up massive crooked numbers here. You know, this isn't Avs Stars round 1 with some 6-5s and 5-4s in there. The Oilers are winning these games with 2 or 3 goals. Stuart Skinner's playing well above what he was doing in the Vegas series or, frankly, in the regular season. You're getting timely power play work. And even the penalty kill. I know they got dinged for a power play goal against tonight on the Robertson goal, but the penalty kill has increasingly gotten better. And yes, does the penalty kill give me a little bit of agita, the way they run the 3-and-1 where everybody starts looking to one side and the back door is almost always open for a big one-timer, or that player on the back door has a good 5 to 10 feet of ice to skate into? Yes, that terrifies me. And and the last big point, I should say, because I do have one more thought off of this. The last big point I wanted to hit on tonight's show is that you are getting production out of Leon Draisaitl. And Leon was great in last year's playoffs, don't get me wrong. But the longer that series went on, especially against Florida, the returns started to diminish. And after playing an 82-game regular season and 25 playoff games, I get it. 107 hockey games over almost 8 months is a lot of hockey. You throw in all of those miles, the 25 to 30-minute games in the playoffs where you're running a 10-forward bench and you're pushing, you're running 6-on-5s all the time. It starts to accumulate. But you got a good Leon performance tonight. And you have Connor and Leon driving 2 separate lines. And we should address the fact that Zach Hyman did leave this game early. I talked about it a little bit in my hit for Locked On Game Night, but I don't like that play. And look, as an Oilers fan, I get it. There are going to be people who pop in here just to hear what I have to say about the injury. And, well, did you see what Bouchard did to Roope Hintz? I think that's dumb too. I think ankle checking a guy coming off of an injury and risking a penalty in that situation is dumb. I get why he did it. I don't think Bouchard is a bad person, but I get it. That's part of the culture in the playoffs. And I think if you know anything about Mason Marchment, the hockey player, you know he's somebody who likes to walk right along that edge, just like Evander Kane, just like Corey Perry, where if he can get away with it, he's going to do it. And I don't think that's a particularly malicious or violent play. But he saw Hyman's hands were extended out in front of him. He had the opportunity to follow through on a hit and knock out an important player. And hopefully Hyman is okay, or at least is only going to miss a game or two. But that's a key player, man. You might be able to get by with no Zach Hyman for a few games, but you need him on the forecheck. You need him at the net front on the penalty kill. And you losing a first-line caliber player this late in the playoffs when the Oilers have had pretty good injury luck this far, knock on wood, it's really unfortunate. It's really frustrating because Zach Hyman's someone who has really tailored his game to exactly what the Oilers need in these playoffs, where he's leading the entire playoffs in hits by something like 20. He's got the most hits of any Oilers player ever in a postseason, going back to when they started tracking hits, which is, I believe, about 20 years ago now. The Oilers have really put together a fascinating group that is playing really high-level hockey. And the last point I wanted to hit on today's show, and something I want you to think about going forward, is think about how few mistakes the Oilers make, whether we're talking about just taking bad penalties, and I know they had two dumb ones tonight. You think about the bad penalties. You think about how easily they go from defense to offense. If the puck's behind the net, D to D, out. If they need the rim play, that first player is always where they need to be at the half wall to receive that rim pass so they can break out. The Oilers have put together 3 really good hockey games in a row now where they have hit moments when they've needed them. They have hit those rush plays. They've hit on the power play when they've needed those. And they have a Stars team that is really talented. Like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Stars are in the Western Conference Final again next year, if not in the Stanley Cup Final. But the Stars are a team that has had this happen to them pretty consistently during this tenure of this core, where they control a lot of the possession. They have a deeper lineup, but they cannot break through. And Stuart Skinner very well might be the Dallas Star stopper, which is a crazy sentence to say about someone who had a below 900 save percentage in the regular season. But here we are again in the second straight Western Conference Finals, where Skinner has outplayed Jake Ottinger. And I don't think that's a crazy opinion. Jake Ottinger isn't having a bad series by any means, but he hasn't stolen a game for the Stars yet. And look, he very well might steal game number 5 and make me look silly right now saying this. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. I think there's a strong argument that you pick who starts for Team USA in the Olympics next year based on who has a better first 2 months of the regular season between Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. I think Ottinger is that good. But right now, the Oilers are getting just a bit more. And that doesn't mean Stuart Skinner is better than Jake Ottinger, that he's playing better. That's not evidence-based. That would be anecdotal. That would be recency bias. You know, my favorite bias, I just learned about it, recency bias. But look, if you're an Oilers fan, you deserve to feel good about this right now. You hope Zach Hyman's okay. You savor this. You don't get too high. And you get ready for a kitchen sink game from the Stars on Thursday, because that's a team that's in this spot again and really, really, really needs to break through. And it wouldn't surprise me if they won game number 5. Wouldn't surprise me if the Oilers won game number 5. But if you feel it, and I kind of feel it now, that the Oilers have found exactly what they need to do situationally, that they are prepared for whatever comes across them, it's hard not to start believing. But that will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. If you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star review would mean the world, helps other people find the show. The more clout we get as a show, the easier it is to get better guests and so much more. Or if you prefer YouTube, I definitely would recommend subscribing to YouTube for when we do play diagrams. We break at the dry erase board, show you how things work mechanically. Definitely something that enhances your viewing experience. And be sure to check out Locked On NHL and Locked On NHL Game Night, breaking down the biggest action and storylines all across the NHL, wherever you get your podcasts or over on YouTube on the Locked On NHL feed. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.